Its knees hurt. They always hurt by evening. She had been scrubbing the marble floors of the imperial palace since dawn, and the cold stone showed no mercy to human bodies. Around her, other human servants worked in silence. Speaking was not allowed in the royal halls. Looking up was not allowed either. Humans were meant to be invisible. She dipped her brush into the bucket of cleaning water and continued her work. The water was cold and her fingers had turned red hours ago, but did not complain. She never complained. Every credit she earned went back to Earth to her younger brother. He was only 16, living alone in their small apartment inn. Their parents had died during the Integration War when Earth first made contact with the Galactic Collective. Had been 18 then. She had raised by herself for 2 years before taking this job on. The palace was beautiful, she had to admit. Crystal pillars rose toward ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow. Light came from glowing stones embedded in the walls, casting everything in soft blue and silver. The who walked these halls were tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and eyes that shone like stars. They moved like water, graceful and proud. When they passed human servants, they did not see them. Humans were furniture. Humans were tools. Had learned to accept this. She had no choice. That evening, her supervisor approached her. His name was Overseer, a human who had worked in the palace for 30 years. His back was permanently bent from decades of bowing. His eyes had lost their light long ago. "You," he said, pointing at, "the dragon's sanctum needs cleaning. Prince has left for the northern provinces. You will clean while he is away." His heart stopped. The dragon's sanctum was forbidden to servants. It housed Siora, the imperial dragon bonded to Prince. Dragons were sacred to they were ancient creatures, telepathic and dangerous. No one entered the sanctum except the prince himself. "The dragon," whispered. "What about the dragon?" Overseer shrugged. "She sleeps during evening hours. Be quick, be quiet, do not wake her. If you die, we will find another maid." He walked away. That was all the guidance she would receive. Gathered her supplies and walked through the palace corridors. Her footsteps echoed in the empty halls. The guards at the sanctum door looked at her with something like pity. One of them almost spoke, then stopped himself. He simply opened the door and stepped aside. The dragon's sanctum was vast. The ceiling rose hundreds of meters above, disappearing into darkness. The floor was covered in soft sand, white as snow. Strange plants grew along the walls, their leaves glowing faintly purple, and in the center of the chamber, coiled like a mountain of silver metal, lay Siora. Had never seen a dragon before. Pictures could not capture the truth of such a creature. Siora was enormous, larger than any building had known on Earth. Her scales shimmered like liquid mercury, shifting colors with each breath. Her wings were folded against her body, each one large enough to cover a sports stadium. Her head alone was bigger than a shuttle craft. Even in sleep, she radiated power. The air itself seemed to tremble around her. Forced herself to breathe. She moved to the far edge of the chamber and began cleaning. Her brush made soft sounds against the stone. She worked slowly, carefully, keeping her eyes on the dragon. For an hour, nothing happened. Began to relax. Perhaps she would survive this after all. Perhaps she would return to her quarters, sleep a few hours, and wake tomorrow to scrub more floors. Perhaps life would continue its gray, endless pattern. Then Siora opened her eyes. They were violet, deep and ancient, burning with intelligence that no human could fully understand. The dragon's head rose slowly from the sand. Her nostrils flared, catching scent. A low rumble built in her throat, shaking the floor beneath his feet. Dropped her brush. Her body screamed at her to run. Every instinct built into human DNA over millions of years told her to flee. But the door was too far, she would never make it. And somewhere deep inside her, a different voice spoke. A voice that sounded like her mother, who had died protecting their family. A voice that sounded like her father, who had never bowed to anyone. The voice said, "Stand." Siora lunged. Her massive head shot forward like a striking snake. Felt teeth graze her hand, felt them pierce her skin. Blood splashed onto the white sand. The pain was sharp and immediate, but did not scream. She did not run. She stood perfectly still and looked directly into the dragon's ancient eyes. "If you want to kill me," she said, her voice steady despite the blood dripping from her hand, "then kill me, but I will not give you the pleasure of my fear." Siora froze. Her violet eyes widened. Something passed between them in that moment, something could not name. It was like a door opening in her mind, like a light turning on in a dark room. She felt the dragon's surprise. She felt her curiosity. She felt something that might have been respect. Slowly, impossibly, Siora. The dragon settled back onto the sand, her eyes never leaving his face. And then, from deep within that massive chest, came a sound had never expected to hear. Siora was purring. The sanctum door burst open. Prince stood in the entrance, his star-bright eyes wide with shock. He had returned early from his journey. He had come to check on his dragon, and now he stared at a scene that should not exist. A human maid stood in the center of his sanctum, bleeding from a dragon bite, meeting his ancient companion's gaze without fear. And Siora, the dragon who had never accepted anyone but him, was purring like a content cat. "What," Prince whispered, "is happening here?" Looked at him, blood still dripping from her hand, and said nothing. She had no answer. She did not understand it herself. But something had changed in that moment. Something had begun. And nothing in the palace would ever be the same. News traveled fast in the palace. By morning, every servant, every guard, and every noble knew the story. A human maid had survived a dragon bite. More than survived. The dragon had shown her mercy. The dragon had purred. Sat in the medical wing while a healer wrapped her injured hand. The healer did not speak to her. His face showed disgust, as if touching a human was beneath him. But he did his job, and soon the bleeding stopped. The wound would heal. The scar would remain. Guards came for her before she could return to her quarters. They did not explain where they were taking her. They did not need to. Knew. Prince wanted answers, and she had none to give. The prince's private chambers were larger than the entire apartment building where he had grown up. Silk curtains hung from the ceiling. Furniture made of crystal and dark wood filled the space. Prince stood by a window, looking out at the purple sky of. He did not turn when she entered. "Leave us," he told the guards. They obeyed, the door closed, and the prince were alone. He turned to face her. Prince was young for royalty, perhaps the equivalent of 30 human years. His skin was pale blue like all his kind, and his silver hair fell past his shoulders. His eyes were the color of dying stars, gold and orange mixed together. He was beautiful in the way a sword was beautiful. Sharp, dangerous. "Do you know what a dragon bond means to my people?" he asked. Shook her head. "No, your highness." Dragons choose their partners through telepathic connection. They look into your soul and judge your worth. If they find you worthy, they bond with you for life. If they find you unworthy, they kill you. He paused. "Siora has been bonded to me since my birth. She has never shown interest in another living being, until last night." Did not know what to say. She kept her eyes on the floor, as servants were taught to do. "Look at me," Prince commanded. She raised her eyes. His expression was not angry. It was confused, perhaps even afraid. "The high priest examined you this morning while you slept," he continued. "He found something he called resonance. It is a phenomenon mentioned in our oldest texts, a rare event where a dragon recognizes a soul of exceptional quality. It has not happened in 3,000 years. It has never happened with a non." His heart pounded in her chest. "I do not understand, your highness. I am just a maid. I clean floors." "Yes," he said slowly, "you clean floors. You are a human, a species my people consider barely civilized. You have no telepathic ability, no royal blood, no special training. And yet my dragon, who has lived for 200 years, who has seen empires rise and fall, looked into your soul and found something worth keeping." He stepped closer. "What are you of Earth?" Before she could answer, the door burst open. A woman swept into the room, her silk robes flowing behind her like water. She was tall even for her, and her beauty was cold and perfect. Her eyes were ice blue, and they fixed on with pure hatred. "So this is the creature," the woman said. "This is the human who dares to reach for what is not hers." "Lady," Prince said, his voice suddenly formal, "this is a private audience. Nothing involving your dragon is private, my prince. Siora's bond affects the entire empire. If this human thinks she can steal what belongs to royalty, she is mistaken." Felt the woman's contempt like a physical weight. Lady was powerful, could sense it. This was someone who destroyed obstacles without hesitation. "No one is stealing anything," Prince said. "The maid is being questioned, nothing more." Lady smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "Of course, I simply came to offer my support. These are troubling times. Strange things are happening. Perhaps a human has found a way to trick our sacred dragons. Perhaps she carries some device, some technology that creates false bonds." She looked at. "Perhaps she should be executed just to be safe." "That is not your decision," the prince replied. Lady bowed her head slightly. "Of course not, I merely advise." She turned and left, her robes whispering against the floor. The silence that followed was heavy, understood now. Lady wanted to marry Prince, was a threat to her plans. This woman would not stop until was dead. That night lay in her small servant bed and stared at the ceiling. Sleep would not come. Her mind was filled with questions she could not answer. Why had the dragon spared her? What was this resonance? What would happen to her now? Then she felt it, a presence at the edge of her thoughts, warm, curious, ancient. Siora sat up. Through the small window of her room she saw something impossible. A massive silver shape moved through the courtyard, crushing garden plants under enormous claws. The dragon had escaped the sanctum. The dragon was coming for her. Guards shouted. Alarms rang. But Siora ignored them all. She reached the servants' building and lowered her head to the window. Those violet eyes looked in, filled with something that might have been affection. Then the dragon pushed her way closer and wrapped her long neck around the building, coiling her body protectively around the entire structure. Servants screamed and fled, but did not move. She reached out and touched the scales near her window. They were warm, like sun-heated metal. Through their growing bond, she felt Siora's thought, clear as spoken words. "Mine." The entire palace watched in stunned silence. A human maid stood at her window, hand pressed against a dragon's scales, while the most sacred creature in the empire guarded her like treasure. Everything had changed. There was no going back now. The emperor was ancient. His skin was deep blue, almost purple, and his eyes had faded to pale silver. He had ruled for 500 years. He had seen wars, plagues, and rebellions. Nothing surprised him anymore, until now. He sat on his throne of black crystal and looked down at. She knelt on the cold floor, her head bowed, her heart racing. Around her stood the entire royal court. Hundreds of nobles watched in silence. Prince stood to the side, his face unreadable. "A human," the emperor said. His voice was soft but carried through the massive throne room. "A cleaning woman. My grandson's dragon has chosen a cleaning woman." No one laughed, no one dared. "The priests have confirmed the resonance," the emperor continued. "This has not happened in 3,000 years. Our laws are clear. When resonance occurs, the chosen one must prove their worth through the ancient trials. If they pass, they may bond with the dragon. If they fail, they die." He leaned forward, studying like a scientist studying an insect. "Do you wish to attempt the trials, human? You may refuse. You will be exiled from forever, but you will live. I advise you to take this option. No human could survive our trials. Your species is too weak, too primitive. You would die in the first test." Felt the weight of every eye in the room. She felt Lady's hateful gaze burning into her back. She felt Prince's concern, though he tried to hide it. And deep in her mind, she felt Siora's presence, warm and steady like a heartbeat. She thought of her brother, alone on Earth. She thought of every human servant in this palace who had been told they were worthless. She thought of her parents who had died believing in a better future. "I will attempt the trials," she said. The court exploded in whispers. The emperor raised his hand, and silence returned. "Very well, the trials begin tomorrow." That night Prince came to her quarters. He dismissed the guards and closed the door. His face showed worry he could no longer hide. "You should have taken the exile," he said. "I could have arranged for you to live comfortably on one of our colony worlds. You could have sent money to your brother. You could have survived." Shook her head. "If I run now, I prove them right. I prove that humans are cowards, that we are lesser. Pride is not worth dying for." "This is not about pride, Your Highness. It is about truth. My people are not lesser. We are simply different. And maybe, if I pass these trials, others will see that." He stared at her for a long moment. "You truly believe you can succeed?" "No," she admitted, "but I believe I have to try." The first trial began at dawn. It was called the Trial of Mind, was led to an underground chamber where a circle of ancient dragons waited. They were smaller than Siora but still terrifying. Their combined telepathic power created a mental maze, a labyrinth inside her own thoughts. "You must find your way out," the high priest explained. "If you become lost, your mind will break. You will live, but you will be empty, a shell without thought." Entered the maze. Instantly she was lost. Her thoughts scattered like leaves in wind. She saw memories that were not hers. She felt emotions from strangers. The maze twisted and changed around her, walls appearing and disappearing without warning. But through the chaos she felt something else, a silver thread connecting her to Siora. The dragon could not solve the maze for her, but she could guide her. "Turn left. Move forward. Trust yourself." Followed the thread. She closed her eyes to the illusions and listened only to that warm presence in her mind. Hour after hour she walked, until finally she stumbled out of the maze, exhausted but whole. "Impossible," the high priest whispered. She should not have been able to enter at all. Humans cannot perceive telepathic constructs. But she had, and she had survived. The second trial was the trial of body, was taken to the frozen peaks of Mount, the highest mountain on. She was given no food, no shelter, no supplies. She must survive one night in temperatures that would freeze in hours. The cold hit her like a fist. Her thin clothes offered no protection. Ice formed on her eyelashes within minutes, or would have died quickly. Their bodies were not built for extreme temperatures. But humans were different. His grandmother had taught her survival skills when she was young. Her grandmother had lived through harsh winters on Earth, in mountains not unlike this one, knew how to build shelter from snow. She knew to keep moving, to generate body heat. She knew which muscles to flex to prevent frostbite. She built a small cave in the snow and lined it with her own hair, torn from her head for insulation. She did jumping exercises through the night, never letting her body rest completely. She ate ice slowly, letting it melt in her mouth so it would not steal heat from her stomach. When dawn came, the observers found her alive. Barely alive, but alive. "Humans are persistent hunters," she told them through blue lips. "We survived ice ages on our world. We are harder to kill than you think." The third trial was the trial of heart, was placed in a chamber where the dragons looked into her deepest fears. She would face whatever terrified her most. The chamber changed. She was no longer on, she was floating in space, surrounded by stars. And everywhere she looked, she saw humanity disappearing. Earth crumbled to dust. Human colonies winked out like dying lights. Her brother's face faded from her memory. The galaxy continued without them, and no one even noticed. Humans were forgotten completely, as if they had never existed. This was her deepest fear. Not death, not pain, irrelevance. The terror that her species meant nothing, that all their struggles and hopes and dreams would vanish like smoke. Tears froze on his cheeks. The vision was overwhelming. She felt herself breaking. Then she heard Siora's voice in her mind. "Remember who you are." Straightened, she looked at the dying galaxy around her and spoke. "Even if this happens," she said, "even if humanity disappears tomorrow, we will have existed. We will have loved and fought and dreamed. We will have sent one of our own to stand before dragons and refuse to be afraid. Maybe the galaxy will forget us. But right now, in this moment, I am here, and I will not let fear erase me." The vision shattered, stood in the empty chamber alone. The doors opened. Prince rushed in, followed by the high priest and dozens of nobles. They stared at her as if seeing a ghost. "She passed," the high priest announced, his voice shaking. "All 3 trials, she passed them all." The palace fell silent once more. A human cleaning woman had done what many nobles could not. She had proven her worth. But knew this was not the end. Lady's eyes burned with new hatred across the room. The real battle was just beginning. The lunar festival was the most important celebration on. 3 moons aligned in the sky, casting silver light across the planet. The entire empire gathered at the palace for feasting and dancing. Nobles wore their finest robes. Music filled the air. For one night, even servants were allowed to join the celebration. Wore a simple blue dress, borrowed from another maid. It was nothing compared to the silk and jewels around her, but she did not care. In 3 days, the bonding ceremony would take place. She would become the first human dragon rider in galactic history. Everything she had suffered would finally mean something. Prince found her standing alone on a balcony, watching the 3 moons rise. "You should not be out here by yourself," he said. "Lady has powerful friends. Not all of them accept your success in the trials." "I know," replied, "but I could not stay inside. Too many people staring at me like I am a puzzle they cannot solve." Smiled slightly. It was the first time she had seen him smile. It changed his face, making him look younger, more human somehow. "You are a puzzle," he said, "even to me. My people have studied humans for decades. We thought we understood you. Weak bodies, short lives, limited telepathic ability, but we missed something important." "What did you miss?" He was quiet for a moment. "Your hearts. We measured your bodies and your minds, but we never understood your hearts. You love so fiercely. You hope against all evidence. You refuse to surrender even when logic says you should." He looked at her. "Watching you face those trials, I finally understood why humans survived on your death world. Not because you are strong, because you are stubborn beyond all reason." Laughed softly. "My mother used to say the same thing. She called it our greatest flaw and our greatest gift." She was wise. "She was," his voice grew sad. "She died protecting my brother during the Integration War. A warship crashed near our home. My father ran into the fire to rescue survivors. He saved 3 soldiers before the flames took him." She looked at. "Your people killed my parents, and yet my father still tried to save your soldiers. That is what humans are, Your Highness. We cannot help but care, even about those who hurt us." Said nothing, but something in his eyes shifted. A servant approached with a tray of drinks. "Refreshments for the honored guest," he said, offering a crystal glass to. She took it and drank. The liquid was sweet and cool, tasting of fruits she did not recognize. 10 seconds later, her throat began to close. The glass shattered on the ground, grabbed her neck, gasping for air. Her skin burned, her vision blurred. Poison. The drink had been poisoned. Caught her as she collapsed. He shouted for healers, for guards. Chaos erupted around them. But far away, in the dragon's sanctum, Siora felt her bonded partner dying. The dragon's roar shook the entire palace. Walls cracked, windows shattered. The ancient beast burst from her chamber and flew toward the festival grounds, her massive wings creating hurricanes in the courtyard. Her eyes blazed with violet fire. Her mind screamed with rage and grief. She landed in the center of the festival, crushing tables and sending nobles running. Her tail swept through decorated pavilions like a scythe through wheat. Her flames, which she had not used in decades, scorched the ancient stones. Mine, her telepathic voice thundered into every mind within a kilometer. Who has harmed what is mine? The servant who had delivered the poison tried to run. Siora's claws caught him before he took 3 steps, but was still dying. Prince lifted her in his arms. He knew where he had to go. The sacred healing springs beneath the palace. They were reserved only for royalty, blessed by dragons centuries ago. Using them for a human would be the greatest breach of tradition in history. He did not hesitate. Guards tried to stop him at the entrance. He pushed past them. Priests shouted that he was committing sacrilege. He ignored them. He carried down the spiral stairs, through corridors lit by ancient glowing stones, until he reached the waters that glowed with soft golden light. He waded in, still holding her. The water came to his waist, warm and strange, filled with power he did not understand. He held his head above the surface and watched her pale face, her blue lips, her closed eyes. "Do not die," he whispered. "Please do not die." He realized in that moment what he had been denying to himself. He had fallen in love with this human woman. This stubborn, brave, impossible woman who had walked into his world and changed everything. "You terrify me," he said to her unconscious form. "Your whole species terrifies me, not because you are dangerous, because you are relentless. You come from a world that tried to kill you every day. You live barely a century and still you fight, still you hope, still you refuse to break. My people forgot how to do that. We live for hundreds of years and we have become cold and careful. We calculate everything. We feel nothing deeply." He pressed his forehead to hers. "You feel everything. And I think that is the greatest strength in the universe." Hours passed. The golden water did its work. Color returned to his cheeks. Her breathing steadied. Her eyes fluttered open. She saw his face above her, wet with tears he did not bother to hide. "You saved me," she whispered. "You saved yourself. You survived long enough for the springs to help you." She managed a weak smile, stubborn like you said. Above them, Siora's rage had calmed. The dragon felt her partner's recovery through their bond, but the fury remained, cold now instead of hot. Someone had tried to kill her human. There would be consequences. Lady watched from the shadows, her face pale with fear. Her plan had failed. The human lived, and now the dragon knew she had an enemy. But Lady was not finished. She had one final weapon, one ancient law that even the Emperor could not ignore. If she could not kill in secret, she would kill her in public, and the whole galaxy would watch. Lady stood before the Emperor's throne, her voice ringing through the silent hall. "I invoke the duel of flames," she declared. "By ancient law, I challenge this human's right to bond with a dragon. Let her prove her worth in combat or let her die as a fraud." The court erupted in shocked whispers. The duel of flames was an ancient tradition, almost forgotten. A formal challenge that could not be refused. The challenger and the challenged would fight until one yielded or died. Dragons would watch but could not interfere. Lady was a trained warrior. She had fought in border conflicts. She had killed rebels with her own hands, was a cleaning woman who had never held a weapon in her life. This was not a duel. This was an execution dressed in legal clothing. The Emperor studied. "You may refuse the challenge. You will forfeit your right to the bonding ceremony, but you will keep your life." Felt Siora's panic through their bond. The dragon begged her to refuse. Eyes pleaded with her to step back. Even the guards looked at her with something like pity. She thought of every human who had ever been told they were not good enough. Every servant who had scrubbed floors in this palace while being treated like an animal. Every child on Earth who dreamed of stars they were told they could never reach. "I accept the challenge," she said. The arena was ancient, built into a crater formed by thousands of years ago. Stone seats rose in circles around a sand floor. Above, floating cameras broadcast the event to every world in the Galactic Collective. Billions of beings watched. On Earth, sat in their small apartment, his hands shaking, unable to look away from the screen. Stood at one end of the arena. She wore simple fighting clothes borrowed from the armory. She held no weapon. She did not know how to use one. Lady stood at the other end. She wore battle armor that enhanced her already superior strength. In her hands she held a plasma blade that hummed with deadly energy. Her dragon, a war beast named, crouched behind her, his scales black as midnight. Ciora watched from the imperial viewing box, held back by ancient chains that bound her during formal duels. Her violet eyes never left. "This is murder," said to his grandfather. "She has no chance." "The law is clear," the emperor replied. She accepted. The duel proceeds. The horn sounded. Lady attacked. She moved like lightning, crossing the arena in seconds. Her plasma blade swept towards throat, dove sideways, feeling the heat of the weapon pass centimeters from her skin. She rolled, scrambled to her feet, dodged again. Lady laughed. "Run, little human, run like the prey you are." But was not running away. She was studying, watching, learning. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters on Earth. They could not run as fast as their prey. They could not fight with fangs or claws, but they could track. They could watch. They could learn patterns and predict movements. And they could keep going long after other creatures collapsed from exhaustion. Lady struck again and again. Each blow came closer, took cuts on her arms, her legs, her cheek. Blood stained the sand. The crowd cheered for the warrior, certain of her victory. But something strange was happening. Lady was slowing down. Her attacks became less precise. Her breathing grew heavy. Bodies were not built for sustained combat. They were sprinters, designed for quick, decisive battles. Lady had expected to kill in seconds. Now minutes had passed and the human was still alive. "Stand still," Lady screamed. "Fight me." "I am fighting," replied. "I am fighting the way my ancestors fought. We did not defeat our enemies with strength. We defeated them with patience. We followed them for days until they could not run anymore. We wore them down step by step until they collapsed." She dodged another strike. "You are already tired. You are already making mistakes, and I am just beginning." Through her bond with Ciora saw what the dragon saw. Lady's weak points. The places where her armor did not quite fit. The old injury in her right knee. The pattern of her attacks, always leading with the left foot. Stopped running. Lady charged, certain of her kill. Her blade stabbed towards heart, but was not there. She had stepped sideways inside the arc of the blade. Her hand grabbed Lady's wrist. Her foot swept the noblewoman's weak knee. Lady crashed to the sand. Grabbed a broken piece of metal from the ground, debris from some ancient fight. She pressed it to Lady's throat. The arena fell silent. "You poisoned me," said. "You tried to kill me in secret. Now you tried to kill me in public. You have failed both times." She pressed the metal harder. A drop of blue blood appeared on Lady's pale skin. "I should kill you. By your own laws I have the right." Lady's eyes were wide with terror. For the first time in her life, she faced death without power to stop it. Looked up at the crowd, at the billions watching across the galaxy, at her brother whose face she could not see but whose heart she could feel, far away on Earth. She dropped the blade. "No," she said, "I will not kill you, not because I am weak, because I am strong enough not to need your death to prove my worth. Because humans do not measure strength by how many enemies we destroy, but by how many we spare. Because mercy is not surrender, it is victory." She stepped back and helped Lady to her feet. The arena was completely silent. No one had expected this. A human, bloody and battered, victorious in single combat, choosing to spare the enemy who had tried to murder her. Then Ciara roared. The dragon broke her chains with a single motion. She leaped into the arena and landed beside, her massive body creating a wall between the human and any who might harm her. But Ciora was not angry. She was proud. Through their bond felt the dragon's thought, clear and warm. "Now they understand. Now they see what I saw from the beginning. You were always worthy, little human. You were always magnificent. Slowly, impossibly, lowered his head. Lady's own dragon bowed to the human who had defeated his master with kindness. The emperor rose from his seat. The entire arena rose with him. The duel is concluded, he announced. The human is victorious. The bonding will proceed. The cheers that followed shook the foundations of the palace. 3 days later stood in the dragon's sanctum for the bonding ceremony. The ritual was simple. She placed her hand on Siora's scales. The dragon pressed her mind fully into's, and something clicked into place, like a key turning in a lock that had waited 3,000 years. They were one now, forever. Prince stood beside her, holding her free hand. They had not spoken of the future. They did not need to. Some things did not require words. You know they will write songs about this day, he said. Smiled. Good. Humanity could use a few more songs. Far below, in the palace courtyard, humans and mingled for the first time as equals. Word had spread across the empire. The treatment of humans was changing. Laws were being rewritten. A single woman who cleaned floors had shifted the course of galactic history. Arrived at the palace the next week. Embraced her brother and wept, and Siora wrapped them both in her silver wings while the purple sky of painted everything in light. What happens now? Asked. Looked at the alien world that had become her home. She looked at the dragon who had become her other half. She looked at the prince who had become something she had never expected to find. Now, she said, everything changes, and we get to help decide how. Siora rumbled contentedly. Through their bond, felt the dragon's final thought of the evening, ancient and warm and filled with satisfaction. You were worth the 3,000-year wait, little human. You were worth everything. The 3 moons rose over the palace, casting silver light on a galaxy that would never be the same. And somewhere, across countless worlds, humans looked up at the stars and dared to dream a little bigger.